Is how Hitler was able to rise to power and how he was able to become the Führer of Germany and how he was able to really just maneuver his way to the top and how he was able to get absolute power in Germany to do whatever he wanted. So let's go all the way to the beginning. Let's go to World War One. I believe that Hitler was a corporal in World War One. He served, in World War One, and he had a gas attack. He suffered a gas attack, and he saw that his superiors were Jews, and he saw that the Germans lost World War One, and he blamed that on the Jews, and he blamed that on the bankers, and he blamed that on the democracies of the Western countries, and he used the Jews as a scapegoat for World War One, and that was the reason why he believed that the Germans lost World War One, was because of the government and the Jews in the government and the communists and everything and all this bullshit. So after he loses World War One, he moves around from place to place. Basically, he's poor. He has no money. He has no connections. He has nothing. He tries to get to become an artist in art school in Austria somewhere, and he gets rejected because he's not good enough to be an artist. And that's how life is. You're not good enough to do something, then no one's going to hire you, and no one's going to ask you to do their job, or no school's going to want you to go there if you don't really know the prerequisites for that program. So he is unable to get into art school, and then after that, was he the founder of the Nazi Party? Well, it wasn't called Nazi Party. It was called the National Socialist Party. But correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. But I think he started the party in 1920 something, 1922 maybe, somewhere around there. Obviously, I gotta get my facts right if I'm trying to make this video, but I'm basically going off the top of my head here, and that's how it is. But somewhere in the 1920s, I'm talking about the bigger picture here, but somewhere around the 1920s, he was able to start the National Socialist Party. And after that, he obviously became friends and started to gain a lot of followers. And it was basically something like a cult following. He gained a cult following of people that were angry and exhausted after losing the First World War. And they were definitely in financial dire straits, and there was hyperinflation going on in Germany at the time, and the Germans needed somebody that was ruthless and a dictator type person so that they could really try and get their anger out on somebody. They had to have somebody to blame. When something goes wrong, you look around the room and you try to blame and point your finger at somebody, and that makes you feel better because that makes you feel like you've accomplished something, you found the rat. And that's how it was, really. They found the rat, and the rat happened to be the Jews. I'm not saying this as a derogatory way. I'm just talking about it from their perspective, the Nazis. And after that, what happened was he, became friends with a couple people that were definitely in his inner circle, like Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, Hermann Goering, the head of the Luftwaffe, which is the German Air Force in World War II, and Heinrich Himmler. He was the head of the SS, the Sicherheitsdienst, or you would call it the SS, whatever. Stormtroopers, that would be SA, but that's another story. The Night of the Long Knives, 1938. I know my history, man. And after that, what happens is he has a beer hall push, and he has Goering with him, and I believe Goebbels was there as well. But they fail the beer hall push, and Hitler goes into jail because that's you're trying to oust the government. You're trying to deliver a putsch. That's illegal. So he goes to jail for a couple of years, and while he's in jail, he writes this book. I believe it was Herman. No, not Herman. But I believe it was Martin Bormann that told him to write that little diary. Probably told him to write a book while he was there, and he had inspiration from that, and he wrote Mein Kampf. And in Mein Kampf, he talks about his struggle, and he talks about, Mein Kampf means my struggle in German, but he talks about in his book. I haven't read the book. I actually wouldn't mind reading the book so I can get a better perspective on this person, an evil person. That wouldn't be an understatement to call him an evil person, but the book talks about, I know a little bit of cliff notes here and there, but the book talks about how he's going to go about his strategy of World War II, and how his whole life has been a struggle against Bolshevism and all this other bullshit, right? And he says in his book that he's going to attack Russia and blah blah blah, like so many different things, right? And you guys should probably read the book if you guys want to know more about that. And after he writes the book, then he runs for office. He fails a couple times, and then he, like the National Socialist Party didn't have enough party seats to get a majority in the Reichstag at that point. So in 1933, what happened was they got a lot more seats, but they still didn't have a majority. And then the president, I think it was who was the guy's name again? I don't think it really matters. It does matter, but his name, it doesn't really matter. You guys know what I'm talking about. So he gave the mantle of chancellor to Hitler, and the chancellor at that time didn't actually have absolute power in Germany. The person that had absolute power was the president or the prime minister, but it wasn't the chancellor. But after Hitler became the chancellor, he started writing some new laws and regulations that say that he gets absolute power and dictatorship in Germany. So he kind of outmaneuvered them. Hitler outmaneuvered all of his political opponents. He wasn't a very stupid person. Let's be real here. He's a very smart and cunning person. And he was able to outmaneuver all of his political opponents and get absolute power. He used this book, probably. I don't know. He's a very smart person. He was able to outmaneuver everybody and become the chancellor and have absolute power. After that, he started the Reichstag decree, the Reichstag fire decree. And that was a decree that meant that the communists were banned from trying to form any political party, and any political party outside of the National Socialists were banned and they were not allowed. So all opposition parties were basically silenced. All the opposition was silenced, and it was the beginning of a dictatorship. And I believe that if the German people truly didn't want him in office, they wouldn't have voted him in. They wouldn't have asked him to become the chancellor, and they wouldn't have got him that much power. And if there was a huge outcry of non-support and a huge outcry, then Hitler wouldn't have done what he did. He did it with the blessing of the German people, in my opinion, because they were the ones that got him in office. They were the ones that were chanting for him to do these laws, and he started the Nuremberg laws. He started the Reichstag fire decree law. He started so many sweeping other laws that slowly took away the citizenship of the Jews and other people that were in the country. So anti-Semitic laws on the books and all of those things. And the real reason why he was able to become the dictator of Germany and become the Führer was really because of the German people's, they longed for someone to take the mantle and to just take power and just be dominant and make it appear that they were stronger than they actually were, and make them seem better than they are. And because everything that he was talking about, how he was going to make Germany great, and how he was going to get away from the inflation, and he wanted, that's what he talked about. He talked in an idealistic sense, but in terms of economy, the Germans were really, really, really in bad position at the beginning of World War II, because they didn't even have enough grain, enough resources to wage war. The only thing that really bailed them out was Austria, when they took over Austria and absorbed Austria into the Reich. And then when they absorbed Poland, they were able to slowly get back what they lost and get a bit stronger as well. But they were going to become bankrupt because the German system of banking, that was gone. Bartering was their new system of system of trade. It was bartering in Germany during World War II, or even before that. And rationing was introduced in 1939 before the war started. So Germany didn't even have enough food or domestic products to supply themselves even before the blockade of Germany. They were kind of running out of foreign money. But yes, the Versailles Treaty was also another big factor that played into part of Hitler becoming of why Hitler was able to become what he was, because the Germans really hated the Versailles Treaty, and if Hitler was promising to get rid of that treaty, then they would be even more happier to get him in office, because he was when he became the Führer, he promised to bring unemployment down. He accomplished that goal, but he accomplished it with underhanded tactics. It wasn't all black and white. Like said he was going to do that, and he started this project of building the autobahn as well, right? The autobahn project, the motorways in Germany. That's what he promised. He promised jobs and bread and stuff like that, and the German people basically ate it up, and they believed that he was going to do what he said, and that was the undoing of them. The person they brought in was their downfall. That was their downfall, because millions and millions of Germans died in the bombing and the Russian advance into Germany. I advise you guys to listen to some audiobooks about what happened during the last few months of World War II. But really analyzing how he was able to get to power, and how he was and his fall from power and from grace is really interesting. And I think it's one of history's greatest mysteries, and also history's greatest the greatest thing that we can learn from in history is how he was ousted from power, and how he was able to get into power as well. That's something that we really have to look into. I believe that if the stipulations of the Versailles Treaty weren't as bad, then we probably wouldn't even had a Second World War. The Second World War wouldn't have even happened, right? So that's another thing we got to consider a bit. Yeah, that's just a rough outline of how he was able to get to power, and the timeline of events leading up to World War II. 1938 was the Anschluss, right? Or was it 1938 was the Anschluss, and the night of the long knives was 1938. But when was the Anschluss? When was the Anschluss of Austria? When did they take Austria over? I believe it was 1938 as well, though. Like, I believe it was in 1938 too, but I could be wrong. Maybe it was in 1937, but 1937 was when the Japanese invaded Manchuria. So no, that's not the right way. But yeah, those are the timeline of events, and that's all I gotta say.